I gotta tell you a secret, man. I can't remember my childhood. I gave that part of my memory up so I could download the necessary programs that allow me to narrate videos like this one. I just can't remember, man. I just recently installed this Doubler app, and I don't know, man. I think I'm starting to lose it. I gotta get this one going. I don't know, man. I gotta finish this. Anyway, what do you remember hating the most being a child? Story 1. When you went to a family friend's house and you were playing with their children, and then your parents said it's time to go, so you'd go and stand by them, but then the adults would remain talking for another half an hour, but you couldn't go play with the kids because you were about to go, so you had to listen to adult talk while staring at the coffee table? Edit. Wow, thanks for the replies. It's good/sad to see I wasn't the only one who had to endure this violation of human rights as a child. A lot of people have asked if I'm from the Midwest or Latino, and the answer's no. I'm Australian, but it's very common here. I remember the absolute worst one was when I stayed overnight at my friend's house for his birthday, and we were watching this new Pokemon series he had gotten for his birthday. Then my mom came and picked me up a half hour early, and I had to sit in my friend's sister's room, listening to mine and his mom talk about their childhood and ghost stories for an hour, while my friends watched Pokemon in the living room. Worse when you do end up sneaking out under them to go play again. When they spot you, they tell you to come back, and they still aren't ready to go. Or your siblings are doing this when you're ready to go. And then, as soon as they're ready to leave, it's, "I've been waiting for half an hour." If any scenario ever happens like this to me as a kid, it would be at my grandparents'. The waiting is not 30 minutes, it's like an hour. I never really got to play on the playground with kids. I was either too shy or I was at the playground with my brothers. I remember this vividly. Why wouldn't any parent just say, "Oh, why don't you continue playing? We've got some talking to do." I think that's the first time any kid learns about the word ironic, or even hypocritical. I'm sure the parent doesn't think they're taking up that much time. Many of them forget that for kids, time moves a little differently from their parents, especially when they're not doing anything, and especially when there's something fun happening in the next room and they're not a part of it. Story 2. Being talked down to, or people laughing at me when I was telling them something serious. That's bizarre. Even if the teacher didn't believe you for some reason, why suggest a different scenario? When I was in 6th grade, someone who was not our teacher came into the room to administer a standardized test and watched as we filled them out. My first name can be a nickname for a longer name, such as Bobby instead of Robert, although I'm female, but my name is not at all unusual. The teacher told me I had to use my full name. I told her that was my full name, but she argued and said it was a nickname. Lady, I'm in 6th grade. Do you think I don't know my full name? She had to get my regular teacher to confirm. That's bizarre. Even if the teacher didn't believe you for some reason, why suggest a different scenario? Especially a scenario that would require that someone else take the blame. Exactly. If a kid slips and gets hurt on school property under the teacher's watch, then there's trouble for the school and the teacher. If a kid gets run over by another kid, then there's no school or adult at fault. Was the teacher just busy dealing with other kids that were playing pranks or pretending to be dumb? She probably thought this person was trying to act up too. It's like that Key and Peele sketch where Peele plays a teacher and just cannot wrap his head around how people pronounce their names. Or the Rowan Atkinson skit where the schoolmaster is taking names and they're all obviously joke names. Story 3. False accusations, but when you try to defend yourself, you get told to shut up, or even worse, you get punished further. I am an adult, and you are a child. How could I be wrong at all? I remember this so much. So frustrating. It's like that scene from Matilda where Danny DeVito is berating her. I'm big, you're small. Yeah, I think a lot of us could do to have some empathy with kids, especially kids that are under our care or watch. There's still some truth that a kid that's under the care of someone that they barely know will try to do stuff to get away with whatever they can. Exactly what kind of training do teachers get when they are having to deal with kids' behavior? Is child psychology part of it?
Story 4. Living in a house with just one bathroom and so many people. Seemed like someone was always using the toilet or the shower when others needed to use the room. That's why you just go use whatever is available at the same time. I did this. I was the only girl in my siblings. We seemed to have a trust in each other not to peek when one of us were showering. To this day, all but my dad still leaves the door unlocked when we shower, just so anyone who needs to wash their hands or use the mirror can. For me, always just made sure my eyes were open and ready to spray anyone who decided to open the curtains of the bathtub or glass door to the shower box. I think all the kids did this. I remember when my brothers, as a kid, when my mom woke us all up to go pee in the middle of the night. 2 of my brothers just peed in the same time in the toilet. Saves a flush anyways, and they were both boys. I'm surprised you weren't the one that locked the door, considering you're the only girl. Get used to it. I've always been a quiet, observant person, so I just watch, and if it seems careful and okay to do it, then I'll do it. The only time I lock the door is to my bedroom after I shower or am changing. Locking the door any other time to my bedroom, I get questioned why I'm doing that. So, from being questioned so much and not wanting to be questioned, as my family questions me on nearly everything I do as a kid, I just did what they said or allowed. I can never win in any arguments with my family, even if I'm right. My youngest brother found a way to accidentally break into my bedroom door with his butt force when I had it locked after showering as a kid, but thankfully, I was all dressed up. I just didn't want to open the door for him to let him bother me like a typical little brother would do. He always opened my locked door that way after that. It did let me figure out a way to not let him to do it once. Then my door was finally changed. My dad changed all the bedroom doors. Such a relief. In case anyone wondered, I did tell my mom my brother did that and not much was really said to him, so just lets him do it. My mom lets my younger brother do whatever he wants. Spoiled kid. My youngest brother would have been the only one who would want to look at me naked. My older brothers knew what's right and wrong. Story 5. Not getting explanations for things I asked about. My parents and extended family were good-hearted people, but none of them were very intellectually minded. So when I had questions about how things in the world were supposed to work or operate, the answers were frequently unsatisfying, ranging somewhere between because it just does/is to I don't know. And I don't know was sadly never followed up with, but let's find out. I have, of course, overcompensated with my own children on this to a fault. As my eldest son said, I'm afraid to ask you what time it is because then you'll want to teach me how to build a clock. This right here. I was so inquisitive and having no access to answers infuriated me. I remember getting really ticked at my mom once. After asking a series of questions and getting only, I don't know, in response, I finally sighed and said, wow, you don't know anything. Needless to say, there was a butt-whipping I did not soon forget, and it taught me to stop asking questions. Then, a few years later, we got Google. Nothing like hitting a child to soothe the bruised ego. I was 5 and told my mom I hated her. Butt-whipping of a lifetime, and it just made me hate her more. Some parents shouldn't be parents. Story 6. That my feelings didn't matter. If I was feeling anything other than happy, I had to get over it. If I was crying, I was ordered to stop or get something worth crying over. I hate as an adult now seeing other adults ask a kid what's wrong. Kid opens up, and then kid gets made fun of for it being a stupid reason. Then poor kid gets drilled about how they don't know what a hard life is. They're dramatic, etc. I hate that junk. Oh, you have an important test? Just wait until you're an adult and you're faced with real problems. Not doing well on a test can lead to real consequences. Being held back, being punished at home. As it turns out, I love being an adult and being free of tests, exams, homework, coursework, revision, and everything else to do with school. I still have nightmares from time to time where I suddenly realize I have an exam I haven't studied for, and waking up and realizing those days are over is always a huge relief. The never-ending lectures about how all this work needs to be done and that our futures are resting on it was so damn stressful. Curse those never-ending tests. I always thought, looking back, that the dumbest thing I ever heard as a kid was "stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about." If I had to go back and do it again, I would say to my parents, "Well, go ahead, 'cause I'm not gonna stop crying. Do what you gotta do. If you gotta make it make sense for you, go ahead. All I know is letting these feelings out makes me feel better." What was the point of that anyway? I might understand if you're in a public place and you're being kind of loud. Maybe. But if it's at home, just let the feelings out. Your kid's hurting. Try and help them out. Story 7. Being 4'3" with the voice of a tuba. This made my day. Found the walking tuba. Story 8. The cruelty of other kids. +1 for that, mate. Sorry you experienced it as well. It got better for me, hopefully for you too. One of the craziest realizations I had was when I talked to my friend's mom about the bullying I was going through. She told me that she grew up with the parents of every single child who was saying and doing mean things to me. She said that their parents were never bright in school. They were lazy and just not good people in general. She said it wasn't surprising to her that their kids grew up to be little versions of their parents. She said they were just a product of their environment. Ever since she told me that, I felt sad for them every time they bullied me. Said that their parents never provided them with the opportunity to be better. Edit. I asked his mom what happened to the nice people from her class, and she just said they went to college, got really good jobs, and moved far away from our crummy little town. Yeah, that happened with my group of friends. We all just decided that every one of us is going to be excluded at one point or another for absolutely no reason. It was like clockwork. Eventually, the excluded kid would get let back in the group, then we'd do it to someone else. I was so confused when it happened to me. Then I went right along and did it to another kid. I remember it so clearly. One of my friends saying, "I have no idea why we stopped hanging out with so-and-so. He's great." It was just a pointless exercise in cruelty. Story 9. Family gatherings. Had a large extended family, as an mystery word there, and there would be gatherings and functions almost every week. Coming of age, housewarming, marriage, first birthdays called for gatherings between 100 to 2,000 people. You had to dress up and meet people that apparently cleaned your snot as a baby, expecting you to remember that they did so. It was horrid. Kinda miss it now, though. Yeah, I miss gatherings too, and it's sad to me to realize that's a time I can never return to. There was something about seeing our home bustling with older people you don't know, all chatting, eating, and laughing in small groups throughout. You might not know them and are nervous when they first arrive, but they're family friends, so you eventually trust them. Their young kids would be playing with toys and spinning each other with an office chair. Then the older kids would be playing upstairs on the TV because one of them bought a PS1. I never knew it as a kid, but I enjoyed the company of strangers to me. Worst part of it was they started to filter out. The house slowly becomes more quiet, and when you try looking for a stranger or older kid that was kind to you, but they've already left. My dad stopped doing those gatherings when I was around 12, and I always asked my mom why, but she never gave me a full answer. Though I suspect why as an adult now. I still have those vivid memories when I was a kid. Why, man? Don't leave us hanging. Nothing big happened, at least not that I'm aware. My dad is an introvert and hates gatherings, but he hosted these gatherings more to show off. When we stopped hosting parties, my mom would still take me to other friends' parties every Friday for a time. My dad opted to stay home most of the time and go to bed on time as he had trouble going to sleep. These parties were nice while they lasted, but my mom stopped going and taking me when I started high school. When I grew older, I became more aware and understood that it's just part of life. My mom probably couldn't make a few in a row one month because of other plans, or maybe gotten bored of them, or maybe she just didn't like one parent who would always be there. When you stop talking to someone for a period of time, it's really hard to reconnect, and it's very awkward to show up out of the blue. It's how I fell out of touch with my high school friends, and the few I do chat with, all we can talk about is the good old days. Maybe it's best to move on. A science fiction author once said something to the effect of, "We're all actually time travelers. We just happen to move at a rate of 1 second per 1 second. We're always moving forward. Time is something that we always have, but it's always running out. Unfortunately, one of the aspects of time is that things change. I just hope you and everyone you know can appreciate the time you have together. It might just disappear. That sounds depressing, but just know that a lot of things are only for now. It's sad, but part of what makes those times special is that they aren't going to last forever. It's something you can enjoy in your memory, even if you don't do it again. Story 10. What I remember most was some adults not treating me like a human being just because I was a child. I try so hard with my own kids to step back and treat them as fellow humans and not just children. A 4-year-old needs their own space and gets frustrated and gets angry in exactly the same way I do. They just don't have the vocabulary and awareness to express it. My job is to help them express it, validate it, and teach them how to deal with it, not just to tell them to stop whining. I was on my pediatrics rotation in medical school and saw a little kiddo having a meltdown in the waiting room. The mom was getting flustered and frustrated. Then one of the PEDS residents was walking through the waiting room. He got down on one knee, and instead of scolding the child like the mother was, he asked the little kiddo what was wrong. The child said he forgot his favorite toy at home and was afraid something would happen to it. Instead of telling the kid that his toy was safe and that he needs to stop crying, the resident asked his mom if anyone was at home. The dad was. The resident asked the mom if she could text the dad and ask if the toy was safe. Less than 5 minutes went by when the dad sent a picture with the toy, and all was well. The little boy was all sunshine and rainbows after that. All it took was just empathizing with a child and putting yourself in the mindset of a 4-year-old. To us, it seems so trivial that he left his toy at home. But to him, that toy is his whole world. He has spent thousands of hours with it and probably has a special bond. I can't imagine how it would feel to just have that dismissed by the parent when they tell you to just calm down and be quiet. I wish someone did this for me. I remember the first time someone took my side during an argument is when I was freaking 13 years old. I felt I was always wrong by default. I wish I had a parent like you growing up.
Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 11. Being made to eat foods that I couldn't stomach or which were in amounts that were too much for me to handle. You can't leave the table until you finish everything on your plate. I hated wasting food, but I developed clever ways of sneaking unwanted food away and disposing of it without a trace. Thankfully, my parents didn't pull the "there are starving people in Africa" routine because my answer would have been, "So give it to them." I second this. I remember vomiting after being made to eat coleslaw by my father, and I still can't stomach it. Also, whenever I would visit my grandmother, she insisted I drink a glass of milk with every meal, and she made me sit at the table until I drank it all. I couldn't stand it, and to this day I hate milk. Although some milk products are okay. That kind of thing seems to sadly be quite common. I know multiple people with whom entire kinds of food were permanently spoiled just because they had to eat them once against their will as kids. As someone who considers exploring all kinds of cooking one of the most fun things in life, it really makes me angry. My palate is pretty broad as an adult, and I'm typically willing to try anything once. But I can also point to not liking baked beans until recently, lima beans, potato salad, macaroni salad, and hard-boiled eggs due to being made to eat them when I didn't want to. Story 12. My dad was a drunk with opinions. He would wake me up in the middle of the night and talk at me for hours. If we got an answer on Jeopardy wrong that we should have known, lecture. Such angry, drunken lectures. He would throw things at us. Hit us on the head to wake us up. I hated it so much. He expired of liver failure when I was 17. And 22 years later, I can say him expiring was the best thing to happen to me. Nowhere near as traumatic, but my stepfather was heavily verbally and physically abused by all his family members save one, and never got counseling or therapy for any of it, obviously. There were way too many times I, as a child under the age of 14, got into a screaming match with my stepfather that I didn't want to be in, and had no idea why he was yelling and could only be heard by yelling as loud as he was while trying to ask what I had done wrong. It cooled off a little during my teens because I stuck up for myself a hell of a lot more and learned how to not engage or show emotion so things couldn't escalate. Anyways, it wasn't until after he had to be put into a medically induced coma for at least 3 weeks and had to be resuscitated a couple times, coming out as a completely different person, that we could actually foster a relationship. Before that, I initiated zero contact a year before until he went into rehab and got therapy. That hospitalization was the worst thing to ever happen to him, but the best thing to happen to us. Because I said so. Furthermore, the do as I say, not as I do style of parenting does not work. You must emulate good behavior. It's watch and learn parenting that is most successful. I believe it's been established that long before you tell kids, do as I say, not as I do, they watch what you do. You are their parents. To them, you are their everything. Forgive the pun, but literally they look up to you. They see how you act, and they pick up on it. Young minds learn a lot at a very young age. They're really open and receptive to it. There are some parents that kind of forget that and think that they don't pay attention, but they do. Story 13. Being so sad that I wanted to unalive myself, but being too young to know how self-unaliving works. Instead, I cried under a tree and begged God to make me not alive. Mom hug. We had a neighbor and her sister over. The younger sibling was hitting me with a belt, which sounds bad, but it was very soft, didn't hurt at all, and just made a funny noise. Of course, it made me mad, so I grabbed the belt and slapped her with it. Had a massive welt on her back. The mother showed me the next day, and I felt so bad I was going to commit self-unaliving by shoving a pencil through my chest. Probably wouldn't have worked anyway. A child's remorse is greater than most adults. Children can't understand what their emotions are or what they mean. I think it's less that they don't understand their emotions, while that is true, and more so that they have much less to compare it to. To them, that guilt is the most guilt they've ever felt. That sadness is the most sad they've ever been. It carries more gravity because they have so little else that they've experienced. Story 14. In teens specifically, grow up and be more independent. Gets a job and saves to eventually move out one day. You need to come home sooner. I don't care if you have a job. I'm still your mother/father. This. My parents made it very clear from when I was young that if I wanted to go to college, I would need to pay my own way. I bought my first car and paid all my insurance on it. Got my first job at 16. And yeah, paid my way through college. Still got this kind of hogwash. When you're 8, they act like they can't wait for you to be 30. And when you're 16, they act like they want you to be 8 again. My dad did this to me constantly in high school. It was so frustrating. It's like you want me to act like an adult, but you still treat me like a kid? Every freaking year. Parents, you're lazy and only play video games all day. I had my own job when I was 12, and I was barely even home when I was your age. Me, can I get a job? Dad, no, you have to focus on school. Me, how about one over the summer? Mom, no. Summer is spending time with your family, and this could be one of your last years to enjoy your childhood. Maybe next year. Story 15. The lack of freedom. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things that I wanted to. I relate to this, but my lack of freedom wasn't because my parents had a lot of strict rules or anything. It was just that we lived in the middle of butt-munched nowhere, and my mom hated driving, so I felt guilty asking her to take me places. That can go one of two ways for kids. As you grow up, you find yourself being more independent and wanting to travel more, or you develop a rich inner mind and find more creative ways to occupy yourself. I grew up not having all the social abilities, and so I ended up doing things on my own. I ended up pursuing a lot of creative things and just figuring out how to get the ideas in my head onto paper or a keyboard or whatever. It's very much a cliche, but I will say that restrictions really foster creativity. I think that's why teens are just so creative and so willing to get into trouble. You get told not to do something, and if you want to do it, you'll still find a way. Story 16. Adults not taking me seriously when I'd say I was full, needed a wee, didn't feel well. We don't tell adults they have to eat if they're full or to just hold it if they need the loo. Freaking yes. Seriously, why force basic needs? Yes, I peed less than an hour ago, but I need to go again. Stuff happens. I drank a full bottle of water. No, I can't finish my plate. I'm full. Well, yeah, I'm going to sleep all afternoon and not sleep tonight. You overfed me. Your problem. Going by your username, I assume you're living your best life wearing pink nurse uniforms and playing flute in your spare time? If so, that's lovely. My scrubs are pink and I play the flute to help put my daughter to sleep. Story 17. Having to lie to stay out of trouble. If you tell the truth, I won't get mad. Sure thing, Mom. Here's what happened. Are you freaking kidding me? What the actual hell possessed you to decide that that was a good idea? Go to your room. Don't come out until tomorrow. But, Mom, it's 9 a.m. I don't give a care. I don't want to see you for the rest of the day. It does, however, teach you that if you know you get yelled at about as much for lying than you do for telling the truth, you might as well try and lie your way out. It's a silver lining. You learn to be afraid to tell the truth. You also learn to be extremely proficient at pulling hogwash out of nowhere and sticking with it. God knows I'm not proud of some of the lies I've told, but it's definitely a better life with it in play. Story 18. As a young child, my mother forcing me into social situations despite my extreme shyness. She always hated the fact I was shy. As a teen, my grades were never good enough. Even if I had an A, it could always be a higher A. If my grades dropped to a low B, I would be substance tested and she would tell me she was surprised when I came back clean. My mom forced me into social situations that I hated. She would always say, Lord of Withy-Woods, you have to look people in the eye when you talk to them. You have to speak up so people can hear you. I hated it, and I felt like a rejection of who I was on some level because I was shy too. But in retrospect, it was my parent trying to teach me social skills and social etiquette. And I've made a living off my social and communication skills as an adult, so it was a valuable education. The thing is, I feel drained by social interactions, because it's something I have to really work at to this day. It takes a lot of emotional energy for me to be charming and confident and sound like I'm not a moron. It isn't exactly artifice, because it is me doing the talking, but it feels like a performance in many ways. But I worry that if I don't put all that effort into being charming, people will think I'm a boring dullard and will be ignored. Maybe if I move somewhere new and start fresh as a quiet person, I could get away with it. But if I suddenly go from gregarious and engaged to quiet and reserved, people are going to think I'm a jerkwad or that there's something wrong with me, as from their perspective. I'll have changed radically. What do I tell them? I'm tired of pretending to be sociable. You can invite me to things, but I may not talk much? That seems uncool.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.